At the edge of the galaxy where war is science and silence is law, one rule echoes louder than any weapon. Never speak of the humans. Never ask why they were banned. But when a single question is asked in the wrong classroom, a buried truth begins to stir, one so dangerous, it was erased from every star map and every mind. Some secrets aren't lost. They're locked away for a reason. And once it's open, nothing in the galaxy will ever be the same. In the nebula of the Veil sector, the Galactic Military Academy stood as a beacon of learning and prestige. Here, among the stars, the brightest minds from countless species gathered to study the arts of science, diplomacy, and most notably warfare. The Academy, with its towering spires and intricate architecture, seemed to defy the very laws of physics, floating gracefully within a pocket of folded space-time. Among the many courses offered, one class had always piqued the curiosity of students, but remained shrouded in mystery: advanced warfare tactics. This course, reserved for the Academy's elite, was taught by the formidable Colonel Kalen, a battle-scarred veteran. Kalen was known for his rigor and his tendency to challenge even the most gifted students. However, there was another reason why the class drew such interest. Rumors persisted that Colonel Kalen held the answers to one of the galaxy's most closely guarded secrets: the true reason humans were banned from participating in galactic wars. This very event had haunted him for centuries, leaving deep psychological scars. On this particular day, the lecture hall was filled to capacity. Students of all shapes and sizes, from the towering stone race with their crystalline exoskeletons to the diminutive and agile zephyrs with their winged limbs, crowded the vast chamber. The air buzzed with anticipation as everyone waited for the session to begin. Even the ever-stoic ironclads, known for their emotionless demeanor, seemed to hum with a subtle energy as the minutes ticked by. The hum of conversation grew louder. Speculation ran wild. Why had the colonel been so secretive about today's lesson? What could possibly be so important that even the Galactic Council had kept it hidden? The doors to the lecture hall slid open with a soft hiss, and in strode Colonel Kalen. A hush fell over the room. He was an imposing figure, even by alien standards, belonging to the Draken species. The Drakens were known for their 6 slender, muscular limbs, each ending in razor-sharp claws, and their deep violet eyes that could pierce through even the toughest defenses. His leathery wings were folded tightly against his back, and his bioluminescent skin, a faint, pulsing crimson, cast a glow that illuminated the dim hall. The Drakens, a naturally warlike and fiercely proud race from the harsh volcanic worlds of the Outer Rim, had a long history of military dominance. Kalen's very presence exuded the weight of countless battles and a wisdom forged in fire. Today, Kalen began, his voice a deep rumble that echoed through the chamber, we delve into a subject that has long been considered taboo. You have all wondered why the species known as humans, from the planet Earth, have been banned from participating in galactic warfare. The answer to this question lies deep within the history of the galaxy, within a story that has been erased from official records. A truth buried to protect not just the galaxy, but perhaps the very fabric of reality itself. The students exchanged uneasy glances. This was not the usual preamble to a tactical lesson. Colonel Kalen was known for his methodical approach, his strict adherence to logic and facts. Today, however, there was something different in his tone, an undercurrent of unease, as if he himself was wary of the knowledge he was about to impart. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, a flicker of pain crossing his Draken features. With a wave of his clawed hand, the colonel activated the room's central holographic projector. A brilliant 3-dimensional image of Earth materialized in the air above the students, slowly rotating to reveal its blue oceans and green continents. For many in the room, it was the first time they had seen this remote, seemingly insignificant planet up close. This, Kalen continued, is Earth, a planet located in the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy. A world that at first glance appears unremarkable. Its inhabitants, the humans, are a young species, technologically inferior to most civilizations represented here. And yet, they are the only species in the known galaxy that has been explicitly banned from participating in any form of galactic warfare. The question you must be asking yourselves is why? The hologram zoomed out, showing Earth's position within the vast expanse of the Milky Way. To answer that, we must go back over 5 centuries, to the time of the Great Galactic War, a conflict that nearly tore the galaxy apart. The war was fought between the Galactic Council and the ruthless enemy known as the Dreadnoughts, a species from the Omega Quadrant who sought nothing less than the complete subjugation of the galaxy. The hologram shifted to show scenes of the war, massive fleets clashing in the void of space, planets besieged by dreadnought forces, and the devastation left in their wake. The scale of destruction was almost incomprehensible, even to the most battle-hardened of students. The dreadnoughts, Kalen said, his voice laced with the weariness of memory, were unstoppable. They conquered entire star systems with terrifying speed. The Galactic Council, desperate and on the verge of collapse, called upon every species in the galaxy to join the fight. Even the humans were asked to contribute despite their limited capabilities. What happened next is what history has tried to forget. The hologram now showed early human spacecraft primitive by galactic standards, but there was something about them, something raw and dangerous. They moved with an almost reckless abandon, employing strategies that defied conventional military doctrine. Humans, Kalen explained, his voice strained, are not like other species. Their evolution has gifted them with an unparalleled adaptability, a fierce will to survive, and an imagination that knows no bounds. When they joined the war, they brought with them a kind of ingenuity that the galaxy had never seen before. Their tactics were unorthodox, their weapons crude but effective, and their resolve unmatched. But it was their ability to think beyond conventional limits that truly set them apart. The hologram shifted again, this time showing a massive explosion in space, a dreadnought fleet being consumed by a swirling, blinding flash of light and debris so intense it seemed to tear at reality itself. This, Kalen said gravely, his voice barely a whisper, is the nuclear barrage of annihilation, a human invention born out of desperation. It doesn't just explode, it initiates a supercritical chain reaction that rips apart matter and warps space-time within its affected zone. It was a weapon of last resort, used only when all other options had failed. But its use came at a cost so immense that the Galactic Council decided humanity could never, ever be trusted with such destructive power again. The room was silent. The students, who had expected to hear tales of heroism, or perhaps even condemnation, were instead confronted with the stark reality of war, the lengths to which a species would go to ensure its survival, and the devastating consequences that could follow. The humans, Kalen concluded, his voice heavy with the weight of history, won the war for us. But their victory was impure. The destruction they wrought was so immense, so uncontrollable, that the Council had no choice but to ban them from future conflicts. Their technology was confiscated, their participation in the war erased from official records, and the truth hidden for the safety of all. The hologram faded and the room was plunged into darkness, save for the faint crimson glow of Kalen's skin. The student sat in stunned silence, processing the gravity of what they had just learned. But remember this, Kalen said, his voice softer now, almost a whisper. The ban was not just to protect the galaxy from the humans. It was also to protect the humans from themselves. For in the heat of battle, they unleashed a darkness that even they could not control. And that, my students, is the real reason humans are banned from galactic war. With that, the lecture ended. Colonel Kalen left the room, leaving the students to their thoughts. As they slowly filed out, the weight of the forbidden knowledge hung heavy in the air. They had come seeking answers, and they had found them, along with the unsettling realization that some truths were perhaps better left undiscovered. But for some, like Zora, the young Valerian with an insatiable curiosity, the lesson was only the beginning. As she made her way back to her quarters, her mind raced with possibilities. The truth about humanity had been hidden for centuries, but now that it was out, she wondered what other secrets the galaxy might be hiding, and whether she was brave enough to uncover them. The sun of the Veil sector had barely risen when Zora arrived at the lecture hall, her mind still churning from the revelations of the previous day. She wasn't alone. The hall was already filling with students, each absorbed in their thoughts, eager to learn more about the mysterious events surrounding the humans and the Great Galactic War. The anticipation was palpable, a buzzing energy that vibrated through the room. As the final students took their seats, the room dimmed and the holographic projector flickered to life, casting a soft glow over the expectant faces. Colonel Kalen, with his usual imposing presence, entered silently. His violet Draken eyes swept over the room, noting the barely restrained curiosity in his students. He knew what they were seeking, and today he would give them the answers at least, the answers they were prepared to hear. Yesterday, Kalen began, his deep voice resonating through the hall, we touched on the role of humanity in the Great Galactic War. Today we will delve deeper into that history. The war was not just a battle between the Galactic Council and the Dreadnoughts. It was a crucible in which the fate of the entire galaxy was decided. And humanity, though an unexpected participant, played a pivotal role. The hologram flared to life once more, displaying a massive fleet of dreadnought warships, their sleek, ominous forms cutting through the darkness of space. The dreadnoughts, a species of relentless conquerors from the Omega Quadrant, were known for their ruthlessness and advanced technology. Their ships bristled with weaponry, each one a self-contained engine of destruction. They were the scourge of the galaxy, feared by all who had the misfortune to cross their path. The dreadnoughts, Kalen continued, a haunted look in his eyes, were unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. Their technology was superior, their numbers overwhelming, and their ambition boundless. They sought not just to conquer, but to annihilate, to erase entire civilizations from existence. The Galactic Council, despite its vast resources and the combined might of countless species, found itself on the brink of defeat. The hologram shifted to show the Galactic Council's fleet, an impressive armada by any standard, composed of ships from dozens of species, each bringing their own unique technology and combat strategies to the fray. Yet, despite their diversity and strength, the Council's forces were being systematically outmaneuvered and overpowered by the dreadnoughts. It was in this darkest hour, Kalen said, his voice tinged with a mix of admiration and foreboding, that the Galactic Council reached out to Earth, a planet they had long considered insignificant. The humans, though technologically inferior, had shown promise in their early spacefaring ventures. They were resourceful, adaptable, and above all, relentless in their pursuit of survival. The Council, desperate for any advantage, invited humanity to join the war. The hologram now displayed early human spacecraft, sturdy but unremarkable vessels equipped with basic weaponry and primitive shields. But there was something about the way they moved, the way they fought, that set them apart from the more advanced ships of the Council. The humans, Kalen continued, were an unknown quantity. They lacked the advanced technology of other species, but they brought something else to the table, an unyielding determination, a willingness to take risks that others would consider reckless, and a capacity for innovation that bordered on the reckless. The scene shifted to a key battle in the war, the siege of Xylar, a strategically crucial planet located on the edge of the Council's territory. The dreadnoughts had surrounded the planet, and its defenses were on the verge of collapse. The Council's forces had been unable to break through the dreadnought blockade, and all seemed lost. Enter the humans, Kalen said, his voice raw with the memory. A small contingent of human ships, led by the now legendary Commander Elias Thorne, volunteered for what was essentially a suicide mission. Their objective was simple: break the blockade at any cost, allowing the Council's forces to regroup and counterattack. The hologram depicted the battle in stunning detail. The human ships, outnumbered and outgunned, launched themselves at the dreadnought fleet with a ferocity that took their enemies by surprise. They used guerrilla tactics, striking fast and hard, then retreating into the cover of Xylar's rings. Their movements were unpredictable, their strategies seemingly chaotic, but there was a method to their madness. Commander Thorne, Kalen explained, his voice strained, employed a tactic that had never been used in galactic warfare before, what humans called kamikaze attacks. He ordered his ships to ram the dreadnought vessels, sacrificing themselves to create breaches in the enemy's lines. It was a tactic born of desperation, but it worked. The dreadnoughts, unprepared for such ruthlessness, were momentarily thrown into disarray. The students watched in awe as the hologram showed the human ships ramming into the dreadnought vessels, creating fiery explosions that lit up the void. In the chaos, the Council's fleet surged forward, exploiting the openings created by the humans in breaking the blockade. Xylar was saved, but at a terrible cost. The human fleet was decimated, with few survivors. The humans' actions at Xylar, Kalen said, his gaze distant, earned them a place in the annals of galactic history. But it also revealed something that both the dreadnoughts and the Council had underestimated: humanity's willingness to sacrifice everything in the name of survival. This was a species that, when cornered, would stop at nothing to achieve victory. The room was silent, the students absorbing the gravity of what they had just witnessed. The story of Xylar was one of bravery and sacrifice, but it was also a stark reminder of the brutal reality of war. But Xylar, Kalen continued, was just the beginning. As the war dragged on, the humans continued to develop new tactics and technologies, each more devastating than the last. And then came the moment that would forever change the course of the war and the fate of humanity. The hologram now displayed a vast, heavily fortified dreadnought stronghold located deep within the Omega Quadrant. It was the heart of their empire, a planet-sized fortress protected by the most advanced defenses in the galaxy. The Galactic Council had attempted to breach it many times, but all efforts had ended in failure. It was here, Kalen said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, that the humans unveiled their most dangerous weapon: the nuclear barrage of annihilation. A device capable of creating an uncontrolled, devastating cascade of nuclear detonations that rips apart matter and warps space-time within its affected zone. The science behind it was barely understood, even by its creators. It was a weapon of last resort, a gamble that could either save the galaxy or destroy it. The students watched in horrified fascination as the hologram depicted the nuclear barrage of annihilation in action. A massive burst of energy erupted from the human shroud, spiraling outwards to form a violent vortex of unstable energy and bizarre light, not just consuming the dreadnought stronghold, but violently distorting the very fabric of space around it. Ships, planets, even distant stars in the hologram seemed to ripple and fray as if pulled into an unseen, monstrous maw. The nuclear barrage of annihilation, Kalen said, his voice thick with unforgotten horror, was humanity's final gift and curse to the galaxy. The dreadnought stronghold was destroyed, their empire shattered. The Galactic Council had won the war, but at a cost so great that it could never be fully calculated. Entire star systems were left as ghost systems, twisted by residual gravitational anomalies and pockets of temporal distortion. The weapon left behind a permanent, hyper-radioactive residue, a strange, decaying energy that disintegrated any matter that entered it. The very fabric of space-time itself was damaged in ways that are still not fully understood, leaving behind persistent temporal distortions and unpredictable energy fluctuations that made transit through the area incredibly dangerous, even centuries later. The hologram faded, leaving the room in darkness. The students sat in stunned silence, grappling with the enormity of what they had just learned. The humans had saved the galaxy, but in doing so, they had unleashed a weapon of such terrifying power that the Council had no choice but to ban them from future conflicts. After the war, Kalen said, breaking the silence, the Galactic Council convened to decide the fate of humanity. It was clear that their technology, their tactics, their very nature posed a threat not just to their enemies, but to the entire galaxy. And so the decision was made. Humanity would be banned from participating in any future galactic warfare. Their technology would be confiscated, their role in the war erased from the official records. The truth would be hidden for the safety of all. The colonel paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. But as we have seen, the truth cannot remain hidden forever. You now know what really happened during the Great Galactic War and why humanity was banned. The question you must ask yourselves is, was the Council's decision just? And if the same situation were to arise again, would humanity and the galaxy make the same choices? The lecture ended with those haunting questions hanging in the air. The students, still reeling from the revelations, slowly began to leave the hall, each lost in their thoughts. Zora, however, lingered behind, her mind racing with new ideas and questions. The truth about humanity had been more complex and more terrifying than she had ever imagined. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to the story, more that had been left unsaid. As she made her way back to her quarters, Zora resolved to find out what that was. She had seen the horrors of the Great Galactic War, but she had also glimpsed the potential of humanity, their capacity for innovation, for sacrifice, and for survival against all odds. What had happened to them after the war? What were they doing now? And could the galaxy afford to keep them in the shadows? Or was it time for humanity to take its place in the stars once more? These questions would not leave her mind, and she knew that her journey was only just beginning. Zora couldn't sleep. The events of the past 2 days churned in her mind, refusing to settle. The story of humanity's involvement in the Great Galactic War was haunting, but it was the implications of what Colonel Kalen had revealed that troubled her the most. The humans had been banned not just because of their actions, but because of what they represented, a species with the potential to disrupt the entire galactic order. As she lay in her quarters, staring at the soft glow of the stars outside her window, Zora couldn't stop thinking about the humans. What had happened to them after the war? How had they been able to continue developing their technology in secret? And most importantly, why had the Galactic Council gone to such lengths to suppress their progress? The questions gnawed at her, and by the time the sun of the Veil sector rose again, she knew she couldn't ignore them. She needed answers, and there was only one place she could think of to find them: the restricted archives of the Galactic Military Academy. The archives were a massive, labyrinthine structure buried deep beneath the academy, accessible only to those with the highest clearance. Zora, being a top student, had access to many of the sections, but she knew the information she sought would be locked behind the most secure barriers. Still, she was determined. If humanity was as dangerous as the Council claimed, she needed to understand why. If they had been wronged, she needed to know the truth. Zora made her way through the Academy's halls, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. She knew she was taking a risk, a huge one. If she were caught accessing restricted files, the consequences could be severe. But the thought of uncovering the truth, of discovering what the Council had hidden for so long, was too compelling to resist. The entrance to the restricted archives was guarded by an intricate security system, a combination of biometric scans, encryption codes, and quantum locks. Zora had anticipated this and had spent the previous night preparing. She had managed to acquire a temporary security clearance from an unsuspecting administrator, timing her access to coincide with the early hours when security protocols were less stringent. With a deep breath, Zora stepped up to the scanner. The cold light of the biometric reader passed over her, and for a tense moment, she feared she'd be caught. But then, with a soft beep, the doors slid open, revealing the darkened interior of the restricted archives. Zora stepped inside, her breath catching in her throat. The archives were enormous, stretching out in all directions, filled with endless rows of data cubes, ancient tomes, and holographic displays. The air was thick with the weight of knowledge, much of it long forgotten or deliberately buried. Navigating through the dimly lit aisles, Zora searched for any reference to humanity after the Great Galactic War. She knew that the Council had erased much of their history, but she hoped that some records had survived, hidden away in the depths of the archives. After what felt like hours of searching, Zora finally found what she was looking for: a data cube, small and unmarked, but pulsing with a faint, almost imperceptible light. It was tucked away in a forgotten corner of the archives, as if someone had deliberately tried to hide it while still keeping it accessible to those who knew where to look. Zora carefully extracted the cube and connected it to her personal datapad. The cube's encryption was formidable, but Zora was a skilled hacker. She worked quickly, bypassing layers of security until at last the contents of the cube were revealed. What she found shocked her to the core. The cube contained files from a secret project codenamed Exodus. It detailed a plan that the Galactic Council had implemented shortly after the war to monitor and control the development of human technology. The Council had feared that even after the ban, humanity would continue to evolve, finding ways to circumvent the restrictions placed on them. The Exodus project had several phases. The first was the surveillance and sabotage of human technological advancements. The Council had secretly planted agents on Earth and within human colonies, ensuring that any breakthrough in weapons technology or space travel was either suppressed or co-opted by the Council. The second phase was far more sinister. It involved psychological and biological experiments designed to limit human aggression and innovation. These experiments, conducted on Earth under the guise of medical research, were intended to weaken humanity's will to resist, making them more compliant and less likely to challenge the Council's authority. But what shocked Zora the most was the final phase of the Exodus project, a contingency plan known as Silent Dusk. If humanity ever posed a significant threat to the galaxy again, The Council had developed a doomsday weapon, hidden somewhere in the far reaches of space that could be activated to wipe out the entire human species. The weapon was designed to target human DNA specifically, ensuring that no trace of their existence would remain. Zora felt a chill run down her spine as she absorbed the implications of what she had discovered. The Galactic Council, the very institution that had presented itself as a beacon of peace and stability, was prepared to commit genocide if it meant preserving their control over the galaxy. Humanity, it seemed, had been living under the shadow of annihilation for centuries, completely unaware of the sword that hung over their heads. Zora knew she couldn't keep this information to herself. The truth had to come out. But she had to be careful. The Council's reach was vast, and if they discovered what she had found, they wouldn't hesitate to silence her. She carefully copied the data from the cube onto a secure drive and made her way out of the archives, her mind racing with plans. She needed allies, people she could trust to help her reveal the truth. And there was one person she knew she could count on, Kyle, her closest friend and a fellow student at the academy. Kale was waiting for her in the academy's communal garden, a serene place filled with exotic plants from across the galaxy. He was tall and slender, with the aquamarine skin and webbed hands characteristic of his species, the Aquarians. His large, expressive eyes widened in concern as Zora approached, her face pale and drawn. "Zora, what's wrong?" Kale asked, his voice calm but laced with worry. "I found something," Zora said, her voice trembling with urgency. "Something that changes everything we know about the Council, about humanity, about the entire galaxy." Kale listened intently as Zora recounted what she had discovered in the archives, his expression growing more serious with each passing moment. This is unbelievable," Kale said when she finished. "If what you're saying is true, then the Council isn't just protecting the galaxy from humanity. They're actively oppressing them, keeping them from realizing their full potential. And they're willing to wipe them out completely if they think it's necessary." Zora nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "We have to do something, Kale. We can't let this continue. The humans deserve to know the truth, and the galaxy needs to understand the Council's true nature." Kale hesitated, his mind racing as he considered the risks. "Zora, if we go public with this, we'll be making powerful enemies. The Council won't just sit by and let us expose them. We could be expelled, imprisoned, or worse." "I know," Zora said, her voice firm, "but we can't just stand by and do nothing. We have a responsibility, Kale. We're not just students anymore. We're witnesses to a crime that's been kept hidden for centuries. If we don't act, who will?" Kale sighed, then nodded, a look of resolve settling over his features. "You're right. We have to do something. But we need to be smart about it. We can't just leak the information without a plan. We need to find people who can help us, who have the resources and influence to protect us and ensure the truth reaches the right hands." Zora smiled, relieved that Kale was with her. "I've been thinking the same thing. We'll need to reach out to our contacts on Earth, people who are in a position to understand the gravity of what we found. We also need to find allies within the Academy, people who share our concerns about the Council." Together they began to sketch out a plan. Zora would transmit the data to trusted contacts on Earth, using encrypted channels that would bypass the Council's surveillance. Kyle would quietly reach out to sympathetic students and faculty at the Academy, building a network of allies who could help them if things went wrong. As they worked, a sense of purpose filled them both. They knew the risks they were taking, but they also knew that the truth was worth fighting for. The Galactic Council had ruled the galaxy with an iron grip for too long, and it was time for their secrets to be exposed. But as they set their plan into motion, neither Zora nor Kale could fully anticipate the consequences of their actions. The truth was powerful, but it was also dangerous, and once it was unleashed, there would be no turning back. The early morning skies over Earth's capital were deceptively peaceful as the sun's rays pierced through the thin veil of clouds, casting a golden hue over the city's spires. Few could have imagined that within hours, the planet would be on the brink of a decision that could change the course of galactic history. Zora stood at the communications console in her quarters at the Galactic Military Academy, her heart pounding as she prepared to transmit the files she had uncovered. Beside her, Kyle checked the encryption one last time, ensuring that the data would reach Earth undetected by the Galactic Council's surveillance. The plan they had set in motion had taken weeks to coordinate, and now the moment of truth had arrived. "Are you sure about this, Zora?" Kale asked, his voice calm but tinged with concern. "Once you send this, there's no going back." Zora nodded, her resolve unwavering. "This is bigger than us, Kale. The humans deserve to know what's been done to them, and the galaxy needs to understand the true nature of the Council. We can't keep this secret any longer." With a deep breath, she activated the transmission, watching as the files containing the truth about Project Exodus and the Council's plans for humanity were encrypted and sent across the vast expanse of space. The data would reach a select group of human leaders, scientists, and historians, those who had long suspected that their history had been manipulated, but had never had the proof to expose it. As the transmission was completed, Zora felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. The truth was out, but what would happen next was uncertain. The galaxy was a complex web of alliances, rivalries, and secrets, and she had just tugged on one of its most dangerous threads. Meanwhile, on Earth, the encrypted message was received in a secure facility deep beneath the capital. The recipients, some of the most influential and secretive figures on the planet, gathered in a dimly lit room, their faces grave as they read through the files. The leader of the group, Director Alana Reed of the Earth Coalition Intelligence Agency, was the first to break the silence. This is unprecedented," she said, her voice steady but betraying a hint of shock. "The Galactic Council has been controlling our development for centuries, using us as pawns in their grand scheme. And now we know they're prepared to destroy us if we ever become a threat." Around the table, the others murmured in agreement, their faces pale as they grasped the implications of the information before them. They had long suspected that Earth's technological stagnation in certain areas was no accident, but the scale of the Council's interference was beyond anything they had imagined. "This changes everything," said Dr. Jian Li, a leading scientist and one of the foremost experts on extraterrestrial technology. "We've been kept in the dark, our potential deliberately suppressed. But now we have the evidence. The question is, what do we do with it?" The room fell silent as the weight of the decision settled on them. They had the power to expose the Galactic Council, to rally humanity and its allies against the oppression they had suffered. But doing so would almost certainly lead to conflict, possibly even war on a scale that the galaxy hadn't seen since the Great Galactic War. Director Reed leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "We can't just sit on this information. If we don't act, the Council will continue to control us, and they'll be prepared to use their doomsday weapon if we ever step out of line. We need to take a stand, but we have to be smart about it." Durley nodded. "Agreed. We need to secure our technological advancements, develop countermeasures to the Council's weapon, and prepare for the possibility of conflict. But we also need to reach out to other species, those who might sympathize with our cause. The Council's actions won't sit well with everyone, especially if we expose their true nature." The decision was made. Earth would not remain silent. They would reveal the truth to their people, but they would do so strategically, building alliances and preparing for the inevitable backlash from the Galactic Council. The message was clear: humanity would no longer be a pawn in the galaxy's power struggles. As Earth's leaders began to mobilize, Zora and Kale continued their efforts at the Academy. Kale had quietly rallied a group of like-minded students and faculty, those who had grown disillusioned with the Council's iron grip on the galaxy. Together, they formed a resistance network, working to spread the truth and gather support from other species who had also suffered under the Council's rule. Word of Zora's discovery began to spread through the Academy, despite the best efforts of the administration to suppress it. Whispers of rebellion echoed through the halls as students and teachers alike began to question the narrative they had been fed for so long. The tension was palpable, a simmering unrest that threatened to boil over at any moment. And then it happened. The Galactic Council, having detected the transmission from the Academy to Earth, issued an emergency decree. They declared a state of martial law across the galaxy, citing the threat of unrest and rebellion sparked by dangerous misinformation. They demanded that Earth surrender those responsible for the transmission and cease all attempts to develop advanced weaponry. The Council's fleet, the most powerful in the galaxy, was dispatched to Earth to enforce their demands. But Earth did not back down. With the support of their new ally species, who had long harbored grievances against the Council, they stood firm. Human scientists, working tirelessly in secret, had developed countermeasures to the Council's doomsday weapon. They had also made significant advancements in their own military technology, thanks to the knowledge Zora had uncovered. The first shots were fired on the edge of the Milky Way, where the Council's fleet encountered Earth's newly fortified defenses. The battle that ensued was brutal and swift, with both sides suffering heavy losses. But Earth's forces, bolstered by their allies and their new technology, managed to hold their ground. The news of the battle spread like wildfire across the galaxy, igniting a wave of uprisings on numerous planets. The truth about the Council's oppressive tactics had galvanized entire species to rise up against their rulers. What had begun as a single transmission from the Galactic Military Academy had sparked a revolution. Back at the Academy, the situation reached a boiling point. The Council, desperate to regain control, ordered the arrest of all those suspected of involvement in the leak. Zora and Kale, now considered enemies of the state, were forced to flee, aided by their network of supporters. As they made their escape, the Academy itself became a battleground. Students and faculty who had sided with the Council clashed with those who supported the resistance. The once peaceful halls of learning were filled with the sounds of conflict, the echoes of a galaxy-wide struggle playing out on a smaller scale. Zora and Kale, along with a small group of loyal friends, managed to secure passage off-world, heading toward Earth. They knew that their fight was far from over. The Council would not easily relinquish its power, and the battles to come would be even more fierce. But they also knew that they had already achieved something monumental. They had given humanity and countless other species a chance to break free from the chains of oppression. As their ship sped through the stars, Zora looked out at the vast expanse of space. The galaxy was a dangerous place, filled with uncertainty and conflict. But it was also full of potential. The humans, once seen as a threat to the galaxy, were now its hope, a symbol of resilience, innovation, and the unyielding desire for freedom. And as the ship hurtled toward Earth, Zora allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The truth had been unleashed, and there was no going back. But she was ready for whatever came next. The galaxy was changing, and she was determined to be part of that change no matter the cost. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt full of possibilities. And Zora knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with courage, alongside her friends and allies, as they fought for a galaxy where freedom, not fear, would reign supreme. In every corner of the galaxy, history is written by those in power and erased from those who dared to defy it. But the truth has a way of resurfacing through whispers, questions, and the courage to ask what no one else will. If one student can uncover what galaxies tried to forget, imagine what you could change by daring to look deeper. Stay curious, stay questioning, and never stop seeking the truth between the stars. If this story sparks something in you, subscribe for more galactic tales, hit that like button to support interstellar truth seekers, and share this with someone who still believes the universe hides more than it reveals. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon in the galaxy is a question.